on digital radio, on the app, on your smart speaker, on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch.tv, and Facebook.
The Sports Cast. Expect the unexpected.
The update presented by the Sports Cast.
Welcome to the Sportscast, October 24th, 2024. If you haven't yet, please subscribe at all our channels, YouTube, Twitch, X, and Apple Podcast. You can also listen to us on your smart speaker. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. You could also visit our website, thesportscast.net. Also, you could go to our online radio, which you can listen to at thesportscast.net. Also, on our app, you could get our app for the Sportscast for iOS, and please follow us on X and Instagram at the Sportscast1. It is soccer season. MLS Cup playoffs begin this week. We had a wild card, and of course, we got some Champions League, but we got Phillips back from Mexico. He witnessed the U.S. loss against Mexico 2-0. And Pochettino's first encounter of a USA versus Mexico rivalry. Welcome back to the Sportscast.
Always a pleasure, Santi. Yeah, since we last spoke, I've been to Guadalajara and the UK. Not so much soccer in the UK, although I did drink in a bunch of it. But it's good to be home, and it's good to get Pochettino's debut window out of the way.
So you're very familiar with Pochettino, who coached for your favorite club, Tottenham. I think before we signed up in August, we were hearing rumors of Pochettino, and I didn't hear much I don't remember I heard much you saying about that potential hire, but so far, what do you think?
I'll be honest, I didn't think it was possible. So it was rumored along with, a bunch of other names like Zidane and stuff. And I thought Klopp, being available might be an interesting hire. And he's such a cuddly, PR friendly dude. He would be a great host, as it were. But this is a major coup for the Federation, and they should be congratulated. I don't care how they paid for it. Apparently they brought in some rich folks to help do that. I don't care. They did very well to land this guy because he's a first-class coach. And I'll tell you what, he strikes even more fear into the hearts of Mexicans and South American rivals, because Argentinian coaches are highly revered in our world, and especially in the Americas. 7 of 10 of the CONMEBOL teams are coached by Argentines. Tata Martino at Inter Miami, formerly a Mexican national team coach. This hire got the attention of all of CONCACAF and CONMEBOL.
And this would not have happened, do you think, if Matt Crocker was not GM, because he worked Pochettino when they were both in Southampton, you think?
I suppose it was obviously a relationship that already existed, and Pochettino went on, that was 10 years ago. In the meantime, he coached Tottenham and PSG and Chelsea. So Matt Crocker wasn't involved in any of those hires. And, some guys might have viewed the relationship with Crocker as, a stepping stone. You worked at a small club with this guy, but both of them went on to bigger and better things. So obviously they leveraged that. And here we are. It's hard to know whether or not that had, much to do with the decision, other than they already knew each other. The real key was that Pochettino was between jobs. He was amenable, he's bilingual, and they found a truckload of money for him. Rumored to be from, a private source outside the Federation, which does not have that kind of cash laying around.
Yeah, I believe the owner of the Falcons, the Home Depot guy, I think he was part of the helping out with Pochettino's salary. And there's another investor, I forgot his name. I gotta look him up.
But you
There
make
was
a
like
good
one or
point.
two. It wasn't like one guy, but I know there
Yeah,
was like
I think you're
more than
right.
one.
But Arthur Blank, interesting,
Arthur Blank. Yeah.
has he's the owner of Atlanta United and of the Falcons in the NFL. He's in bed with the federation now. They're moving their headquarters to Atlanta to a
Right.
custom built, headquarters and training facility. So he's behind that, and it's in his interest that the federation and the national team are doing well. But this isn't all Arthur Blank. They spent huge money to bring in Emma Hayes on the women's side. The U.S. has really led the way here. They've broken the bank. I think a lot of people, myself included, were cynical about the capability of the federation to pay what you need to pay a first-class international coach. But they've done it, and now we can start creating those unintendedly high expectations.
Yes, the other guy was Ken Griffin from Citadel.
Yes.
So he was the other guy as well. So interesting. We'll see what happens.
Mhm.
So USA had their first match with Pochettino 2-0, which is a great match. But Pulisic had a good assist to Yunus Munsa. But you went to the away game, the road game versus Mexico and Guadalajara. How we'll love to hear what happened with that trip. Also, not like you just went to see the match. You also are writing a book about the USA Mexico rivalry, and this would be a good touch to the book. But please tell us your experience.
Well, yeah, the reason I went is obviously I've never been to Guadalajara. I've never been to an away match in Mexico. It's a hole in the resume. So this seemed a good opportunity. I am writing a book to be published by Bloomsbury in early 2026 on the U.S.-Mexico rivalry and all the cultural and competitive aspects of what I am arguing is, the premier international derby in world soccer. Not because it's better than Argentina, Brazil on the field, but because the politics that swirl around this relationship is just ridiculously cool and ornate and volatile. And we can see that every time, immigration is brought up as a presidential, issue, the election that I just can't wait to be over. But it was an amazing trip down there. And competitively, the game was a nothing burger. It really was always going to be that way as soon as all those guys went home, including Pulisic after the first game against Panama, where they played pretty well. But this was really a chance. This was a night for Mexico, is the way I'm thinking about it in my mind. First of all, Guadalajara had not hosted a friendly since 2005.
Wow.
So they were very excited about it, but they were also a little pissed off that the national team has not been back there in 20 years. In that time, the FMF, the Mexican Federation, has played 124 friendlies in the United States. So
I'm not
if
surprised
you're,
that's that.
yeah, it's just an incredible sort of thing. It's one of the themes of the book is these two cultures, these two football cultures that are such rivals, are really growing closer together in really interesting ways. For example, the Mexican national team plays almost all of its games north of the border. They play it, and they do that to make more money because all the 80,000 Mexicans that show up in Vegas for a game, they're spending dollars. And say, oh, it's a great way for them to connect with their culture, and it is, but it costs them. So anyway, Guadalajarans, little sideways, sort of glance at the idea that they're playing in Guadalajara for the first time in so long, and only because Estadio Azteca is under repair for the World Cup. So that was an interesting backdrop. But look, it was a sellout crowd. They were pretty darn excited about it. It was, but unfortunately, it was just not a very good game, and the U.S. just didn't have the horses. They brought, I would say, at best, a B- team to that stadium, the Estadio Akron, which will be renamed Estadio Guadalajara for the World Cup. Beautiful facility in Zapopa. It's a sort of suburb of Guadalajara, and had a great time. Mariachi band playing in the alcove as I walked in. It was perfect. So I wish, part of me wishes it was a better game and that the U.S. had played better. Part of me, I had a lot of friends sitting in the fan section with the American Outlaws. Not very many of them showed up, 50. And I was happy for them that in a way that it was sort of a blowout or not a close game, because would have been a little more raucous and difficult for them to get in and out of the stadium. So it all worked out great. Mexico needed a win. They had not beaten the United States in 7 consecutive meetings. So it all worked out. It was a great night for Mexico.
Usually, especially for qualifiers, the AOs that I hear, like when they go to Azteca, especially, it's a very hostile environment. You didn't have no sense of that when you went to Guadalajara, right? Or...
No, because it wasn't Estadio Azteca, which is where the Federation insists on playing the U.S. because they want every ounce of home field advantage to be expended. So I get that. And they don't mix the crowds in Mexico. In the we saw that in the Copa America. Americans don't really get that. So there's a tiny. They don't think they sold any tickets. They only sold tickets to Americans through the American Outlaws and Ticketmaster. So that there were maybe 100 total Americans in that fan section. I'll have to talk to some of those guys to get a real number, but it just wasn't that big a presence. And the moment Mexico scored, you could just tell that the air went out of the U.S. team. And this was not going to be a tense battle. It was a friendly. So let's not get carried away. But, there was just a lot of differences between, a crowd like that in Mexico and a Mexican crowd in Glendale, Arizona. I mean, everyone was wearing their favorite El Tri jersey. No dressing up, though. No lucha libre masks. No giant sombreros. It was less of a party and more of a regular match supporting the national team. And because they did it so effortlessly, it was just a walk in the park.
Quite something. I did not watch that match, Hal. It was so late at night.
Oh.
It was at 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
Right.
But I did go to the bar to watch the Panama game, and it was a great performance. But so far, how do you see Pochettino style play coming in with the U.S. men's team? Are you liking it, or what do you think so far?
I don't see a whole lot, frankly, that's different. I just don't think that's possible. He literally has had them for 10 days, not even that. And half the team wasn't available to him, half of the first team. And then for the Mexico game, 5 of those guys, I guess 4, I don't even know who Marlon Fossey is, went back to their clubs or were, given the night off. I guess Musa was in that group, but then he did start the game and then came off quite quickly. There was just no real effort to win that match. Or, I think if they had scraped a goal together, I think the entire evening would have been different. If they had scored first, for example, on some fluke, or if they had come out guns blazing and taken a lead, it would have been a very different atmosphere. And you would have seen Mexico pucker up a little bit because they were expected to win, but they did win. And I can't judge anything by the Pochettino performances against Panama and the U.S. But I will say that there were some individual performances that were interesting. I mean, Matt Turner played well. And he also played well with his feet, I thought, which is the big question mark with him. He's obviously been working on it. Aiden Morris was given a chance to play a very, very central role at the back of that midfield 3 and played very well against Panama, but was worthless against Mexico. He really was out of his depth. He was at fault for the first goal. No, he took the foul. And that the free kick scored from, and then he was beaten for the second goal. So it was a big ask. He was really handed a lot of responsibility to handle the ball the way Tyler Adams handles the ball when he's playing in that number 6 position. And he just wasn't up to it. I don't want to pick on the guy. He's Aiden Morris. He's plays for Middlesbrough, and he's a young player who's up and coming. To say that he's ruined his national league, his national team career is not fair or accurate, but he stood out as being not up to the task in Guadalajara.
Quite something. Yeah. As Hal said, Poch just got there. He only has 10 games under his, 10 days under his belt with the U.S. men's, but he definitely, I heard the training sessions are tougher. So things are looking a little bit good for the U.S. men. He also indicated in his opening press conference, that he might bring in more MLS players, but not like he didn't say it clearly, but he indicated something close to that. So
I don't see why he wouldn't do that, and I don't think that Berhalter did any different. And why would he? There are times when you have to fulfill an international obligation, and you can't get the guys you want, or you don't want to pull them all out of Europe for a game against Belize. That doesn't mean anything. So that's the time to get young players, their chops and their desserts. They're just desserts. You play well in MLS, you should get a chance to play on the national team. For a long time, that was all we had. Now we have choices. So, they'll handle it right. And I think that the next year is going to be fascinating, because there are going to be a lot of high profile games. It's going to be really fun to see, how he prepares this team going forward. I mean, we're going to get international breaks every month, through the next 4 months. So I can't wait to see how it comes out. And we'll start to see choices. We'll start to see people that he insists on playing, and we'll see people that he insists on not playing. But I haven't seen any stylistic changes. Have you?
I have not seen much changes yet. I did notice in the beginning of the Panama match, they did press a little bit more, I noticed. But then they kind of like slowed it down in the middle. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. How has his book coming out? We'll wait till the end of the show to find out when that book will come out. So we'll keep you guys on the edge of your seat. Let's go to perfect. This is a perfect week to have Hal on, because the MLS playoffs starts this week. The NBA starts this week. So
Yeah.
I can't. Good thing you waited this week. Before we go into the NBA, let's go to MLS playoffs. It begins this week. We had a few matches already. They had I think for the first time, MLS had wildcard round. So in the Western Conference, Vancouver beat Portland 5-0. That was a thrashing.
Wow.
In the East, Montreal lost against Atlanta United in penalties by Brad Guzan, former U.S. men's goalkeeper. And but now we have the playoffs beginning on Friday, with Miami versus Atlanta, then Orlando versus Charlotte, Cincinnati versus NYC, and then Columbus versus Red Bulls New York. And then let's go to the Western Conference. We got LAFC versus Vancouver, Seattle versus Houston, RCL, Real Salt Lake versus Minnesota, and LA Galaxy versus Colorado. This round is the best out of 3. So whoever wins 2 games will go on to the semifinal. But how do you see this MLS playoffs bracket?
Before I had sort of looked into it, I had this feeling that MLS was a bit top heavy, and that it was really hard to see how Columbus wouldn't end up playing Inter Miami in the Eastern Conference final, and Galaxy and LAFC end up meeting in the playoff version of El Tráfico. So when I looked into it, I think that's true. If so, you're really asking what are the teams that could upset people, as the playoffs go on. And one of them that jumped out was, to me, was Seattle. I saw a great stat that showed that I think they're 6-1-1 against playoff bound Western Conference opponents in the last 2 months of the season. That's pretty good. They've beaten a lot of teams that they're going to have to play to get through. So if they beat Houston and upset LAFC in a semifinal, that wouldn't surprise me. Colorado, I think, is a better team than people know. Jordi Mahavlich has made that team a little classier, and Zach Steffen is a great goalkeeper who's too good for MLS, honestly. So
who got called up for the U.S. men's?
He did. I'm glad. He had a very difficult experience with the national team and Berhalter. I'm not sure that it's really that we shouldn't judge him on that. These things are difficult. So anyway, those are my 2 dark horses, in the West. And I don't have a single one in the East. I think you're going to see Columbus and Miami proceed to what will be a great semifinal. But I have my Apple TV. I'm ready to watch the games, and they appear to have made it easier to go check the highlights or a replay without knowing the result. Although not impossible, it's not impossible to have those results ruined by just going to the interface. I'm not sure what people are thinking. Do people go and just want to see the goals in a game where they know the score? I mean, that's really what they're assuming. Because if I'm going to watch the highlights of a game, I don't want to know the score. I will sit down and spend 12 minutes, watching those highlights if it's new information. But if I know that Columbus has already run, I don't know that I'm going to spend that time. So this is a user X experience that they're going to have to tackle. And it has always bothered me. But that's my take on the MLS. I mean, there's really some, really interesting MLS information coming out, at this time. One of them was FIFA's decision to award Inter Miami a place in the World Club Championship next year, which I think some people rolled their eyes at. But just to be contrarian, I'm going to say, look, every league in the world except ours doesn't have playoffs. And when you win what we call the Charity Shield or the Supporters Cup, whatever the hell they're calling it, you
Community
have won
Shield.
the league. You have the most points. That's how England works. That's how Germany works. That's how everywhere works. Maybe they split it in two, like they do in the Americas. But look, Inter does deserve to go. And it's not just because Messi was there. Messi, how many games did he even play? They won a lot of games without him.
I think 14, I heard.
So, look, they obviously want him around to make that event a success in North America. And I'm sure that Inter will play games in the Southeast, if not Miami itself. I have no problem with that. They did win the league. Now we have this playoff, and a MLS Cup will be awarded. That's great. Think of it as a Torneo Apertura and a Torneo Clausura. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did. Good job. Which, by the way, there was a news story yesterday by The Athletic how that MLS is proposing to switch their schedule instead of the spring starting in March and in December to switch it to the European style, start in August and end May. But the only difference is that there's like a 1 month long winter break. And one of the reasons they're doing that is for the World Cup in 2026, because who wants to watch the 26 World Cup in the MLS at the same time? But have you heard about the story and your thoughts over it?
Yes, I did, and it's on my list of interesting MLS nuggets to discuss because the rest of the world, especially those in the Americas and in Mexico, I'm learning more and more, they really don't like the idea that MLS is playing on this different schedule. It's just a hassle for everybody. We know why they do it. They know why we do it, and there are arguments for it. I mean, look at how well MLS has done of late. Look how well the NWSL has done on its own, where it doesn't have to compete with other sports. But I think this makes great sense for American soccer generally. We're going to get on the same schedule. Transfers are just going to be so much easier between MLS and other leagues going forward. And prices will reflect that because they won't have to wait. And other teams won't have to, a team won't have to finish, a player won't have to finish a season in England before they can come here. It's going to happen immediately, like all transfers do. So it just makes a lot more sense. But that break, I think, is very telling because, the break, we saw that we needed a break like that for Qatar in 2022. And if there's a break moving forward, MLS won't be bothered by a winter break if they bring a future World Cup to Saudi Arabia, for example, which would have to be held in the winter. And again, I'm contrarian on this point too. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's a good way to give players some time off that they wouldn't ordinarily get. Even a tournament like the World Cup is less grueling than playing club football every week, 2 games a week for, that entire period. And maybe they can build some bumpers on either end. But I think FIFA has shown its hand here that they are definitely going to bring, the World Cup to other equatorial regions where you can't play a tournament like that in the summertime. It's just not practical.
Yeah. And another good reason was the CONCACAF Champions League because I think they start right when we start the MLS, so it's kind of like the players are still in preseason mode, and the Mexican teams are not. I mean,
Yes.
they're already in midseason form, so that would be good for us to compete. That's maybe one of the reasons we haven't won it as much as the Mexican clubs. But this, I don't know. It depends who you ask, I guess. You know.
Well, it's I don't know that the CONCACAF Champions League has enough juice to force that change. I think that world soccer has that juice, and that's why this is happening. And I think it's a good thing. I don't think MLS needs to be protected in the way that it did from 1996 to maybe 2021 or two. So it's a different league. It's stronger. And one of the evidence, of that strength is I just saw this. I'll look away from the camera here at these notes. Really interesting MLS attendance averages came out. 19 teams increased their average attendance, 11 by 8% or more. That's huge. Wow. And there's some new teams in there, but they're not always. And they rank incredibly. Both England and Germany had more teams that averaged 20,000 plus fans based on the exceptional strength of their teams in a second tier. But in terms of, teams that average 20,000 or more in a first division, nobody had as many as MLS. I think, the sort of the nugget that I've been using, and, I've been pitching this book and writing stuff about soccer at large in America for a lot of outlets. And one of the things I always cling to is like MLS is apparently the 6th largest league on earth in terms of attendance, total attendance.
That's not bad.
That's impressive.
It's pretty
well.
Good.
Here's evidence that just year over year, 19 of the teams have experienced, upticks in it's a huge, we've got this 20,000 mark that sets us, ahead of every club in the world. Every league in the world, I should say. I was amazed by that. But even, internally in the league, there's an uptick in attendance, and it's impressive. I don't think you can spin the numbers any other way.
Is that, do you think the uptick could be part of the Lionel Messi effect, or
maybe, but only a bit? We're talking, how many games do these guys think? 35, 40 games. Messi only shows up once, and he's only played 14 games this year. I don't think it's a huge factor in that. I think these teams are just getting better established. St. Louis is a team that joined the league and immediately did very well. I'm looking down here. They were 12th. They were ranked 12th in attendance. So when you have a team that joins and they're automatically adding to that 20,000 or more figure, that's pretty freaking good. Even Chicago, and they were terrible this year. Up 17.4%, over last year. I don't know. How do you explain that? It's certainly not Messi
or Apple TV. We'll see.
Or Apple happens. TV. Right. That's a very interesting point, Santi, because you could say that television exposure for the league is less. It's
gone down. You don't see it in ESPN much. No highlights on Sports Center at all.
Well, they've made their choice. They've gone with a sole streaming thing, and I think Apple is making money off it. But it's not hurt attendance. The point is, people are still going to the games. Maybe they're going to the games because they don't have Apple TV. I don't know, but it's a fascinating topic.
Quite something. Let's go on to the Champions League. New format. Completely new format. A lot of big games are going on early on, like yesterday. I mean, this past week, Madrid beating Borussia Dortmund. A repeat from the Champions League. I don't know, for a few months. But what are your thoughts over this new format and all that jazz?
Well, I'm new to it just like everyone else is, and until I would say a week ago, I didn't really understand it. So let me just say quickly that they're crowdsourcing this, the round of 16, and by that I mean they're going to play all these games. I think 8 games in total over the course of the preliminary phase. And you're not going to play home and home with everybody. You're sort of dotted around, and they're like, oh, that's going to help the big teams. Well, yeah, maybe, but the top 8 teams advance right to the round of 16.
Correct. And then there's like a little mini playoff format.
Right. And then the next 16 teams, so that's 24, 16 and 8, right? 24 in total. 16 teams play off, to meet to create those last six. Now, right now, what does that mean? That means Arsenal would play the 24th team, Girona, in a make or break, win or go home match. We got Bayern against Barcelona right now, as it stands. That's a good match, and that's not even the round of 16. So this, everybody, what do you want out of the Champions League? If you're a club, you want money. And what does money mean? Matches. So everyone gets 8 matches. And if you're Brest, which is, the French club that is now the sort of darling of the Cinderella darling of the Champions League so far, you're making money hand over fist. You're getting matches on TV. You're getting games against big clubs. And Manchester City, if they end up having to play, Atalanta, is that a marquee matchup? No, but that means they can rest guys. They're probably going to win the game, and Atalanta is thrilled to get the exposure they do get. So I think it's sort of elegant in its way. I'm sure something will go wrong, and everyone will be bitching about it next week. But right now, you're getting some good matches. The little teams have a chance. Brest is a good example. I'm looking in the top 8. They've already qualified. If it ended today, Sporting would qualify. Monaco would qualify. That's pretty good.
And Villa is number 1 right now.
Villa's number 1, and the Villa fans are coming out of the woodwork now, and they are a good side. I didn't realize John Duran was Colombian.
Yeah, Colombian started actually in Chicago Fire right before he came to Aston Villa, so he's had quite a journey so far.
Good player, just a massive striker. He's just too much to handle in the air.
Scores every half an hour or something.
Yes. Now he's an incredible addition. But I watched Lille, an unheralded team, go to Atletico Madrid yesterday and take them down, 2-1. Or did they add a third? They went down 1 and they won the match on the road. Now, does that put Lille through? No. Does it put Atletico in a position where they have some must-win games coming up? Yes, indeed. They're now 1-2, and they are in 27th position, 3 spots out of that playoff we talked about. I don't know. I think it's sort of good. And the group stage was just tired, and you just knew teams were mailing it in. And what do you think? That was the take of mine by the end.
Yeah, the format so far, I like it. It felt like I have to go purchase Paramount Plus early on. I usually wait till till February when the playoffs start. But no, I like this format because you're seeing Madrid start struggling with Borussia Dortmund, and you're seeing these matches are just becoming so exciting in October. You never got this before.
Well, I mean, they're not, I don't have Paramount Plus, and, so I'm not seeing the breadth of I can't watch all these games. I mean, the CBS Sports is smart. They're pulling a single game out every day to show, and I watch that if I'm able. But these games are going on, and you're seeing there were some other interesting results. Bayern got blown away by Barcelona, the revenge of Hansi Flick, so that would have been an interesting match in theory, but would it have been a fun match to watch? No, they blew them out. So, Bayern's not out. They are now 23rd. They're 1-2, and so they're right just ahead of Girona and just behind GNK Dinamo. That's the Croatian Dinamo, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you sound about right. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it's I don't know. It's interesting. I think that come down to it, there will be matches that Bayern, just to use an example, will have to play on the last two match days that they better win or they ain't going through. And that could be against Paris Saint-Germain or it could be against Girona. And I don't know. I think there's appeal in all those things, especially if if the schedule is clear and you already know that you're playing away. There's, soccer in Europe, they're so tied to this idea that if there's a knockout situation, it's got to be 180 minutes. It's got to be 90 minutes at home and 90 minutes away. And I see the elegance in that, but this is different, and I think it's probably going to work.
Yeah, so far it's working, and it's for sure getting a lot of attention, a lot of buzzing. Let's move to the NBA. How this week it tipped off for the 2024-25 season. Your Boston Celtics had one heck of a night. Obviously, they got their championship rings going on, but they also beat the Knicks, 132 to 109, and I think they had like the most 3-pointers in a game. But how are you looking forward to this season for the NBA?
I'm looking forward to better games than that. It was unwatchable. They were up. I think I turned it on in the first quarter. They were already up 20, and it didn't get any better. The Knicks looked terrible, and they just
new addition, Cat.
I know Cat cannot be effective without a center, to actually rebound and go inside. Mitchell Robinson was hurt, and the Knicks looked terrible. But he was the only one who was hurt. I thought the Knicks looked thinner than I sort of expected them to be in my brain. They certainly can't play the Celtics with such a small team. The Celtics are huge, and they didn't even have Porzingis. So that is one of the things I don't think people recognized until the playoffs last year, is just how big they are. And if they make threes, you're just not going to beat them. And if they don't make threes, they're probably going to beat you anyway. So it's a very good team, and they're highly motivated to win again. And I would like to see that. But I don't know. There's a lot going on in the league that is interesting. There's a lot of new players. I'm in a fantasy league, so I'm sorry, I wasn't watching the Celtics. I'm trying to watch other teams and looking at rosters to see who's around. And it's just it's a bit of a blur right now, Santi. It's I know that Bronny is not. I'm not taking Bronny James on my fantasy team.
I'm sure you won't. I do got the Timberwolves against your Celtics for the NBA finale. So I'm probably think those two will probably make it to the top, unless Denver, could beat Minnesota. But
I watched part of that Minnesota's opening game, and because I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to keep Rudy Gobert.
We got an extension recently.
Yes, and I got him for a pretty good price last year, so I may keep him. But my takeaway was watching that game was Julius Randle is big. We sort of think of Julius Randle as this 6'7" playmaking, shooting.
Point guard.
He's 6'9". He is a big dude. And when he plays next to Gobert, they're big too. And they've got Naz Reid. That's a very versatile team. I don't know what happened to them after they beat the Nuggets. They just couldn't make a shot against Dallas, and out they went. But I think they're a good team. But if they're depending on the Ant-Man to make shots, they're not going to go anywhere, because that's not what he is. He is a streaky shooter. And he's just not a dependable scorer, because he can only get to the rim at when he's cold, and you got to be able to make some shots. So it's early days. That's a very good team. Denver's a very good team still. Oklahoma City's a very good team. Oh, here's a good rumor I heard. What happens if the Bucks, whose roster looks not great, what happens if they're 500 on January 1? Giannis says,
panic button.
You should deal me to a contender. Where does he go?
Who? Lillard or
no, I'm talking Giannis.
Oh, Giannis. Wow. Miami Heat.
I don't think Miami doesn't have the assets to convince Milwaukee to do that. But who does?
Who?
Oklahoma City.
That would be a good place.
Yeah, it would. They could give him, Jalen Williams and 3 first-round draft picks, and maybe throw in another guy, and still have 10 draft picks that are worth the very valuable and a great roster. They have stockpiled so much talent and draft picks. They're the team that if Giannis moves, I can predict right now that's where he goes.
And that's like a situation where they can win this year, possibly.
Yes, that immediately makes them the favorites to win the West going away. And can they beat the Celtics? We'll see.
We'll see.
That would be a great series.
I don't think so. What do you think about Jason Tatum not playing much during the Olympics? Was that like an issue you thought? Like, what the heck happened?
No,
there?
He was terrible. He was terrible in the NBA Finals, if people remember. I think he shot
he didn't have like an MVP series or anything.
Look, it happens. He was cold and just could not make a shot, and did a lot of other things. Dished really well and rebounded. The guy is 6'10". So he did his part, and that's why Jaylen Brown was, the MVP. He did all the scoring, but it didn't surprise anybody in New England that when he went to the Olympic team and did not make a 3-pointer, did not make one. If he's not making those shots, he's not got value enough to play on that star-studded roster. I mean, and also he's a young guy, and maybe there were other Celtics who were contributing, like D White and Jrue Holiday, and those guys were contributing, and it's you got to be part of the team and make it work, and they did. So I honestly, I think Jason Tatum carried himself beautifully throughout that whole
he
time.
Was humble. Yeah.
I mean, he was.
A lot of the old guys carried that team, the Currys and LeBrons.
Yeah,
Crazy.
It was their tournament. It was their team.
It was like they're the highest dance together.
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton is a world-class point guard, and I had him on my fantasy league team here.
He was good for Germany
last year too. Exactly. Yeah. He played even less. You have to have bench players, squad players, as we like to say in football. FUTBOL. But
Hus like Man City. You got to have bench players.
And then and if you look, you signed up for it, you fulfill your obligation, you rest. He's probably tired. I had no problem. It was a media generated BS discussion from the beginning, at least in New England. So I wasn't bothered by it.
How we had such a full show. We don't have time to talk about Tottenham.
Oh no, we can wait. No one knows what's going on with Tottenham anyway. Let's give it another month.
Let's wait till the spring. But they had a good impressive win. I think they beat 4-1 to West Ham, which I guess anyone could be West Ham 4-1.
They destroyed, but they gave away a game after being up 2-0 against Brighton. Brighton's a good team. That was a terrible, terrible loss, and they've given away some. They've lost from winning positions at least twice, maybe 3 times already. So they've got issues. The problem with Tottenham, in short, is his system creates space going forward, and it's undeniable. But what's also undeniable is it creates space for the other team too, and we can't seem to bottle that up.
Double-edged.
Yeah, so it is what it is. It's certainly never dull.
Yeah, never dull in Tottenham. But yeah, like the teams you got to watch out for: Brighton, the Wolves, the Nottinghams. They could be very sneaky, so you can't take those teams lightly. Well, there you have it: a full show, MLS, NBA, U.S. Men's National Team, a little bit of Tottenham. Hal, this is the best week for you to come. I mean, you planned this, didn't you?
It's always a pleasure, Santi. It's always a pleasure to be on. But yeah, there's plenty to talk about.
Well, okay, so now you're like your second book, you're in the process. So what is the status on that? And what do you think people can start buying these books and all that?
Oh, well, the manuscript is due in May of 2025.
Okay.
It's the tentative title is Sibling Rivalry. And it's a focus, not just historical, but cultural, geopolitical examination, and storytelling around this incredible, derby. And it really is. There's no other derby comes close to it in world football when you take it all into account, how much it means to the combatants, the fans. But, we're in the middle of a presidential election here. You can see how important this border is to, certain elements in this country, and the pot stirring that goes on. And there's so much going on between these two countries every day that the football is really the only manifestation for it. And it's very, very good fun and good reading. But what's really interesting to me is that these two communities, after sort of staying away from each other and sort of developing on their own for a long time, are starting to grow together. You can see that the way MLS and Liga MX are getting together for the League's Cup. They're co-hosting the World Cup, for Christ's sakes. I mean, and you've got fan groups in the United States, like the El Tri fans, that basically are driving the sport forward here. And I don't think Americans fans are driving the sport forward in Mexico, but how unusual is it? Would it be if there were 30 million French people in England driving soccer forward in these unique ways? It just doesn't happen anywhere else, and that's what makes it such an interesting topic. So the book will be out in early 2026, in plenty of time for the World Cup, published by Bloomsbury out of London, and I can't wait to well, I'm in the middle of it now. I can't wait for it to not be hanging over my head, but I can't wait to get you a copy, Santi.
Yeah, yes. Let me know. 2026, perfect year. The World Cup, a lot going on. So looking forward to that book, Hal Phillips, and of course you can get his current book, which is out, Generation Zero. You could look at that, the history of the U.S. men's soccer team. You can see the link below. And Hal Phillips, what's the best way to reach you online to get all that information?
It's on that link. That is my companion site for the Generation Zero book. That is also my handle on Threads and Instagram. And yeah, I see. So you're still going with the Twitter handle there. I'm still there. I haven't fled yet, but I don't do much. I mean, are you still enjoying Twitter, Santi?
I still there. Still get all the highlights, all like the late breaking news. I think the Pochettino news was breaking. It was the news broke on Twitter.
Yeah,
by some small Twitter account.
There you go. There's utility to it, but I don't know. It's a bit of a cesspool these days in many ways.
As everywhere else, you can reach us at the sportscast.net, our website, and the Sportscast One. A lot of football this weekend as well with the NFL, NBA just getting started, and of course, soccer never stops, right, Hal? It's all year, even summertime. FIFA Club World Cup next year, CONCACAF Gold Cup as well. So we got our hands full. At least,
yes, indeed. And but the Gold Cup and all that good stuff is going to happen. The book will be done, so I'll be able to get back and enjoy it on a whole different level.
That's right, because you gotta you gotta pay attention to a lot more stuff. I can only imagine. So
the people I think all know how incredible this rivalry has been starting in about 1990, and part of the book, of course, will pick out particular games that were important. The 2002 World Cup win that really changed it. No one took the U.S. seriously, including the Mexicans, until that time. But there's so much more going on around these two countries and the way they look at the game together, apart, and increasingly as partners.
Yeah, and we'll see now with the Pochettino era.
Indeed, and you know what? They are very frightened that Pochettino is in charge. They really they think very well of him, and they're like, oh geez.
Yeah, this is probably the best coach in the CONCACAF of maybe I would say CONMEBOL entirely. I don't know.
Who knows? But you know who owns Mexico was Berhalter, and he's gone. So they're very glad that he's gone. Yeah. They're very glad that he's gone, but not quite so excited about Pochettino taking his place.
That's right. The record that Berhalter had against Mexico is pretty good.
Very good.
Anyways, Hal, thanks for coming on to the Sportscast.
Always my pleasure, Santi.
And this was your